2 days, everyone, before America votes. The candidates are making their last weekend push to seal the deal. Donald Trump holding events in 5 different states today. Hillary Clinton will be in 3. This amid fresh concerns surrounding Mrs. Clinton's ethics. As it is revealed, she instructed her immigrant maid to regularly print her classified emails and schedules and asked her staff at the State Department to forward sensitive information to her housemaid. I'm Trish Regan. Welcome, everyone, to the Intelligence Report. We're going to have more on that developing story that suggests, once again, Hillary Clinton had little respect for the sensitivity of her position as Secretary of State. That's all coming in just a moment. But first, I want to head out to the campaign trail. Donald Trump just wrapping up a rally there in Iowa moments ago. He is now on his way to Minnesota, a state so solidly Democrat it hasn't gone for a Republican since 1972. And then he's going to head on to Michigan, a blue state since 1988. If Trump can take either of those blue states, he will dramatically widen his path to 270. We got team coverage here today in the battleground states. I want to go to Adam Shapiro. He's in Florida today with the very latest on the early voting there. We've got Peter Barnes in my home state of New Hampshire, where Trump has taken the lead. Colin McShane's in Pennsylvania, where Trump is quickly gaining ground. And Jeff Fluck is in Ohio, which has correctly picked the presidential winner every year since 1964. Trump's up 2 points in that state. But let's start here with Blake Berman in North Carolina, a state that is truly a toss-up and very important for Trump's path to victory. Blake, what you hearing?
Hi there, Trish, and welcome here to North Carolina on a beautiful Sunday. Yesterday here, Saturday, wrapped up the end of early voting, and we are starting to get a look at the totals of how things are shaping up here, potentially leading into Tuesday on Election Day. According to the state election folks here in the Tar Heel State, already so far there have been 3.1 million votes cast here in North Carolina out of a possible 6.8 million people here who are part of the electorate. Take a look at that number there. That is 45.2% of all eligible voters have already voted here in the early voting period. So how does that break down? Well, according to ballots cast by Republican, Democrats, and Independent, how you're registered, here's how those numbers shake out. About 42% of Democrats have already voted here in North Carolina, about 32% of Republicans, and that number for Independents is 26%. So how are Democrats and Republicans reading into this? Well, the Democrats, the Clinton campaign earlier this week is pointing to that turnout figure. They say turnout is great here in North Carolina. They believe that benefits them, especially, they say, they are seeing signs of turnout among African Americans here in North Carolina that they feel is pacing with what they need it to be. On the Republican side, the GOP wrapped up a call this morning, and here's the argument that they're making. While Democrats, it's about a 10% edge of ballots returned, Democrats over Republicans, they say their share is ahead of what Mitt Romney's share was in 2012. Basically, while that's about a 10-point spread, they feel that they're doing better here in 16 at this point than Romney was in 2012, and he won this state by about 70, 80,000 votes then. One thing to keep in mind, though, here, Trish, among all of that, when we talk about Democrats and Republicans, you've got about 2 million independents here in North Carolina. And that could potentially be what tips this one way or the other.
Sure, they may decide all of this. Blake, thank you so much. All right, joining me right now, also from the all-important state of North Carolina, Donald Trump's daughter-in-law and wife of Eric Trump, Laura Trump. Welcome, Laura. Good to have you here.
Hey, Trish, thank you so much.
So your father-in-law, he right now has a small lead in this critical state, your home state, and it looks like it's pretty much going to boil down to turnout. What is the campaign doing? What are you doing right now to get supporters out to the polls?
Yeah, well, listen, North Carolina is my home state from the very beginning. I've wanted to be very involved here, and it's obviously critical that we win North Carolina. But I've been on a women's tour across the country, and I think this is our 3rd time actually now in North Carolina. Really just getting out, talking to women, talking to men, talking to all voters about the Donald Trump that we know, because there was a narrative that existed out there about Donald Trump that we didn't agree with, because we know this man personally. We know what a good man he is, what a great father, what a great businessman, grandfather. And so we just wanted to convey that to people. And I have to tell you, the response we get is really incredible.
It's important, Laura. He's still struggling with women. This has been one of his weaknesses. I think that, you know, getting a different message out is obviously critical for you because you need women. What kind of reception are you getting right now, Laura, from some of the women that you're talking to that may have been on the fence and now had that opportunity to hear from you and from other women he's close to?
Well, I love to think that I'm able to change people's minds. What I'll tell you is that women are very enthusiastic about voting for Donald Trump. And I know that there are polls out there that suggest otherwise, but I'll tell you, I'm on the ground. I see it every single day. Women are coming up to me saying every woman I know is voting for Donald Trump. Women are highly offended that a candidate like Hillary Clinton thinks that she gets our vote simply because we are the same gender she is. It's ridiculous. It's insulting. It's offensive. And I think women have caught on to the candidate that she is. We have a candidate under criminal investigation running for the presidency of the United States. Man or woman, that is unacceptable. And I think women have caught on to who Hillary Clinton is, and they want somebody that they can trust, that they respect, and I think it's Donald Trump.
What's your pitch to millennials? I'm curious right now. Millennials seem a little bit on the sidelines. They seem a little reluctant. They liked Bernie Sanders a lot, but now they don't seem to have a ton of passion on either side.
Yeah, well, look, you see what Hillary Clinton has tried to do for millennials. She's trying to pull out all the stops with the big stars, Katy Perry, Beyonce, Jay-Z. Donald Trump really doesn't need that to get crowds. He has tens of thousands of people every day at all these different rallies show up for him. For millennials, I think it's really important that they know that they are going to have a job. You know, these are a lot of kids are in college. They want to know that coming out of college, the economy is going to be good for them, that they're going to have a job. And look, I graduated from college not too long ago. I won't say how long, but not too long ago. And it was hard for me to find a job. So I think that that's something that's really important to them. They want to know that they're safe, that they have jobs, that the economy is going to be something that they, you know, that's going to be beneficial to them.
Yeah, people want to know they have a future. You mentioned a job. You're still a producer at Inside Edition, is that right?
I am, yes. I took a couple months off of my job to come out.
As a member of the media, what's your reaction to how the media in general has treated your father-in-law?
Yeah, and it's really disappointing, to be honest with you, because you and I both know how it works. And you take, you know, one sentence out of an otherwise great interview or great rally, and you can twist things around and make somebody look different than they are. And it's been very frustrating, because this is a man that didn't have to do this. This is a man that I have such great respect for, my father-in-law. He is doing this for the betterment of the American people, for the future of this country. And the fact that he has had the media, the Clinton machine, everything against him, and he has withstood all of that, and we see where he is today, that he is neck and neck, and in a lot of cases winning right now, early voting in most of these states. It's truly incredible. So, look, it has been frustrating, and it's been eye-opening, because, you know, I've seen both sides of this, and I can tell you that, you know, I do look at things a little differently after this process.
Wow. Well, it certainly has been an interesting one. Laura Trump, so good to have you here. Thank you so much. Enjoy your time in your home state.
Thanks, Trish.
All right. Meanwhile, Laura's husband, Eric Trump, is making 4 stops today in Florida, including one that's happening right now in Coral Springs. I think we have a live picture of it. Actually, no, but Hillary's surrogate, President Obama, we do have live pictures of this. He's in Kissimmee, Florida, at an event there. This says early voting wraps up in the state. About half of all registered voters have already cast ballots, with a slight edge of about 33,000 going to the Democrats. Now, the race there, pretty much virtual tie. I want to go to Adam Shapiro, who's there now in Florida with more. Hey, Adam.
Hey, Trish, let me give you the numbers right now on this last day of early voting in Florida, because as you said, 49% of registered voters in the Sunshine State have cast their ballot. That's roughly 6.2 million people. And as we head towards Election Day, here's what we've got. Unaffiliated, non-affiliated voters, that's roughly 1.16 million who have cast a ballot. There's no way of knowing how they have voted. Republicans will tell you that in those numbers are people who traditionally vote conservative, vote Republican. Democrats will tell you that in those numbers are newly registered Hispanic voters who registered and voted for the first time but didn't claim a party, but they say they're voting for Clinton. The numbers just based on those who registered with a party, voting by mail, Republicans, 1,043,000 have sent their ballots in as of late last night, and they've been counted. Democrats, 974,000. Voting early, that's getting on your feet and going to a polling station. And today's the last day in roughly half the counties in Florida to do that. Republicans, 1.35, roughly 1.4 million, have voted early. Democrats, 1.46, roughly 1.5 million, have done that. So overall, in early voting, just looking at who's registered with a party, Democrats are leading by 32,000 roughly. What the Republicans will tell you is that on the last day of early voting in the last election cycle, when you just looked at who's registered with the party, Republicans were trailing by 145,000 ballots. This time it's only 32,000 ballots. What they tell you is that they've closed the gap with the Democrats, and that the Democrats, who have always emphasized early voting, are cannibalizing their vote come Tuesday. And that's why these numbers are in favor, at least right now, for Democrats. So we are in the Sunshine State, as you said. Orlando trying to get.
All right,
Orlando,
Florida's going to be also one of
the
the first results that we see on Tuesday night. The polls close there at 7. People can stay in line, and they anticipate most people will be done by 8 o'clock. But we anticipate getting some early results out of Florida, and this is make or break territory for Donald Trump. Adam Shapiro, thank you so much.
Yep.
Donald Trump deploying one of his most effective surrogates to the great state of New Hampshire today. His daughter Ivanka. Clinton's lead there, just 8 points a couple of weeks ago. It has completely evaporated. It's gone. Donald Trump now has the lead in the Granite State, the live free or die territory. Our Peter Barnes is live in Manchester, New Hampshire right now. He joins me, and I got to tell you, Peter, I'm not entirely surprised by this momentum shift there, knowing folks there as well as I do. What are you hearing?
Yeah, you're right about that, Trish. Donald Trump up now about 2 points in the latest average of polls for New Hampshire, but still kind of a statistical dead heat. And by the way, speaking of dead heats and races, we have the Manchester City Marathon going on behind us, if you remember that from your days here. But Trump, of course, wants to try and ensure a victory here, and one way to do that is to send his surrogates, in particular his secret weapon, his daughter Ivanka, entrepreneur and obviously an accomplished woman, to try to make sure that he can get women to vote here for him. He has been behind with women voters in New Hampshire. According to the Boston Globe, the latest poll, 35% to 50% compared to Hillary Clinton. Ivanka Trump coming here today to talk about a major issue, the opioid and heroin crisis that is taking 400 to 500 lives a year here. She says if her dad becomes president, he will crack down on pharmaceutical companies and doctors. Listen.
We need to control the pharmaceutical companies who are creating gateways for everyone, who weren't looking to get hooked and who get hooked because of overprescription and really just gross negligence on the part of doctors and pharmaceutical companies. It's devastating.
Of course, she was talking about prescription painkillers and the widespread use of those. Interesting statistic up here, Trish. 1 million voters, approximately. Yeah. The Trump campaign says that they've already knocked on 1.6 million doors, Trump volunteers so far, and made 1.3 million calls. So voters up here are hearing a lot from the Trump campaign.
Interesting. I know that Hillary Clinton's side is doing what it can as well, because I'm getting reports that they're literally going door to door knocking to make sure that they're going to get their Democrats out there to the polls. Ground game matters, and you're talking about 4 electoral votes in that little state that may become quite important. Peter Barnes, thank you so much. A bombshell report today, everyone, from the New York Post that Hillary Clinton routinely had her maid print out scores of sensitive government emails and documents, including, get this, classified information. Details next. All righty, the New York Post reporting today that Hillary Clinton routinely had her maid print out sensitive government emails and documents, including ones containing classified information. I mean, who the heck would have their house cleaner print out their work emails? I'm not just talking about any normal work emails. She was the Secretary of State for the United States of America, and she has her maid printing out state documents. Take a look at this email from Hillary Clinton to her top aide, Huma Abedin. Can you get this printed by sending to Marina, that's the maid, or asking specials to print and send me at house? Marina, again, is the name of her housekeeper. Joining me right now, Washington Examiner senior political analyst Michael Barone. Michael, wow. Look, I got to ask, I mean, why didn't the FBI check out this maid's email account? Did they not do as thorough a job as they should have?
Well, obviously, there's some hanky-panky going on here, and this just fortifies and keeps in the news the story about Hillary Clinton's secret email server and the fact that she seems to have considered herself to be above the rules. In 2011, she sent out and signed a letter to all State Department employees telling them about the importance of obeying State Department protocols and keeping confidential information confidential and not using personal email for government business and confidential
it applies
information.
to all of them, Michael, but apparently not to her.
Well, that's right. It's a sort of royalist thing. I wrote a column to the Washington Examiner saying we are not running Republican politics anymore. That's Republican with a small r. We're running royalist politics. And Hillary Clinton is certainly one example of that. You also have the picture of this person that doesn't know how to press the print button, you know?
I hadn't even thought of that. But it seems to me, Michael, that, you know, aside from sort of her living by one set of rules and anticipating that everybody else should live by another, it's the idea that she's not respecting the office she held. I mean, she doesn't seem to understand the seriousness of it all.
Well, this maid, by the way, I gather, was a native originally of the Philippines, of a foreign country. What is her background?
Did she get clearance from the State Department? I mean, shouldn't you have classified clearance if you're going to print the email?
She did not have a security clearance. Now, you know, I basically would assume that she's, you know, a person without security concerns, but we don't know that. And Hillary Clinton, so far as we know, did not ascertain that.
But it's not just that, Michael. It's also her computer. So in other words, what computer was she using this? Why would she get it forwarded to her email? Why would this Marina be getting State Department emails? Because that just increases the vulnerability, effectively, of who
well, there
could
was
look at this.
You know, there was a World War II spy case where the Allies had a spy in the Nazi apparat who was the valet of one of the Nazi leaders, something like that. This can be disturbing, I think, Tricia, especially. You know, you look at voters in a state like Michigan, my home state. We've seen both the Clinton campaign and the Trump campaign sending people in there. Then sending their candidates into there multiple times in recent days. That suggests that a state that was 54-45 for Barack Obama in 2012, a 9-point Democratic margin, is now in play. And Michigan's got 16 electoral votes. It's not chopped liver. Right. This is a serious and important state. And anytime the private email system is in the news, that's not a good news cycle for Hillary Clinton.
But aside from that, I mean, the trustworthiness issues, of course, the concerns about pay to play with the Clinton Foundation, her inability to respect, frankly, her office as Secretary of State in terms of safeguarding some of that information. That's all very apparent to people. But let's get, you know, you mentioned Michigan. You think about Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, these states that have really been hurt, Michael, economically.
Well, you have a high percentage of non-college whites there. Michigan, it's 52%, according to 538.com, of voters. Non-college educated white. That's a demographic that Donald Trump has been doing well in, and the polls did well in Republican primaries. He carried Michigan in the Republican primary, and he carried those areas like Macomb County and western Wayne County, where the latest polling shows him getting a big lead over Hillary Clinton in traditional UAW. Areas of suburban Detroit. Those are the places that Democrats used to rely on to carry that state, and it looks like they may be in trouble there. So, you know, you know,
they keep talking about these Reagan Democrats, and they may be coming out of the woodwork. Those are those blue-collar folks that want some kind of economic change. Michael Barone, I appreciate you being here always, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We got some fresh evidence of media bias. Imagine that. And our competitor, CNBC. So here we go. A day before the chief Washington correspondent, John Harwood, was set to do an interview with Jeb Bush, John Harwood sent this email to Hillary Clinton's campaign chairman, John Podesta. And let me read for you that email. He says, "What should I ask Jeb in speakeasy interview tomorrow?" Okay, so here he is asking John Podesta, Clinton's campaign manager, for questions to do an interview with Jeb Bush. And then, of course, a month later, Mr. Harwood moderated CNBC's widely panned Republican presidential debate. And we know from previous WikiLeaks emails, Harwood boasted to Podesta about his Trump questions, which, well, to the rest of the world, I mean, even the mainstream media here were shockingly biased and just bad. But here's the kicker, folks. John Harwood, who kind of seems like he's in bed with the Clinton campaign, is actually a major part of the network's election night coverage as chief Washington correspondent. Joining me right now for more analysis, Fox News contributors DeRoy Murdoch and Stephen Hayes. Good to see you guys.
Good to be here.
You're contributors, all right? In fact, I don't know if the camera can catch this, but you have a button right here, I guess, that says lock her up.
Lock
so I know
her up.
where you're coming from.
Yes, I have a point of view that I present here as clearly as I can.
But in this particular case, Stephen Hayes, John Harwood is the chief Washington correspondent, which means his obligation is to kind of be middle of the road, give the facts on both sides, and yet now we're learning he's, you know, basically an operative for the Clinton campaign. What's going on here? What does CNBC need to know about the role of chief Washington correspondent?
So I would say there's definitely a difference between chief correspondent and commentator, no question about it. I'm not convinced that we can conclude that John Harwood is as biased as this one email might suggest. What if, for instance, we had emails that were hacked, Russia hacked into Mike Murphy's emails, the campaign manager for Jeb Bush, and John Harwood had sent him emails
Have you seen the
and
other
said,
emails, though? I mean, the other emails, for example, you know, he's talking to John Podesta and is like basically trying to get a high five from Podesta because of his ridiculous questions at the debate, where he basically said, Donald Trump, aren't you just sort of running a Superman, a comic book version of a campaign? So there was a coziness there that, I don't think is normal amongst someone who is trying to be down the middle.
Yeah, not very normal. And I also think it's interesting, the response in the media and in the public about this. People are thinking, well, this is unusual. Tut, tut. Imagine if we had an email from Brett Baer contacting the Trump campaign and saying, what questions should I ask Hillary Clinton tonight? Everything would stop. People would be screaming. It would be leading the news, front page everywhere, total chaos. And this happens. There's some concern,
right?
but not.
They try in the media, especially the left, tries to, because we do actually present both sides, and we try to make sure that we have all angles covered. And somehow just the fact that you're presenting the conservative angle on a story makes you, a right-wing conservative.
That's right, yes.
I think we need more
There's a double
information.
standard.
I think we need more information to make the final judgment about what John Harwood did. I don't think it's necessarily improper just because he reached out and asked for questions. In my course of my reporting, called campaign strategists for other campaigns and said, hey, what do you think about this? Or if I'm going to talk to them, what would you ask? And I just think that's good reporting. But I agree entirely with DeRoy on this question of a double standard. I mean, there's no doubt that if Brett Baer, if everything were reversed about this situation, you would have the chin strokers in the media, furrowing their brow, scolding, tisk, tisk, Fox News, and you're not seeing that.
Well, there's a hypocrisy in general. I mean, I think about the Clinton campaign, the fact that she had Jay-Z on stage with her. Jay-Z, I mean, don't get me started. I've been on this thing all week because I'm just so horrified and disgusted by his language and the way he demeans women in a horrible, tragic way, considering how many young kids are listening to this music. And it's not setting any kind of standard for any kind of normal, civilized person. But anyway, she gets up on stage with Jay-Z and nobody bats an eye. Like his language was terrible, by the way, when he was up on that stage.
Dropping F-bombs, N-bombs, et cetera, and she comes in right afterwards and high-fives the guy.
And,
amazing.
I cannot even, and I keep saying, I cannot tell you what his lyrics are because they are that bad. They don't even make sense, but they're that bad. And they're that antagonistic and misogynistic towards women. And yet she's the women's candidate?
Yeah. Girl power, right?
I mean, again,
I guess there are
where's
limits
the
to
media on this one?
Yeah, huge double standard. If you look at the way that the media have criticized Donald Trump for some of his language, justified criticism, in my view. Mm-hmm. They should be doing the same with Jay-Z, who's in his song lyrics with Hillary Clinton are just as bad.
And you'd think she would have said, okay, well, get up and sing a nice song. Don't get into that sort of thing. Keep it clean. And that didn't happen. Not even close.
So you go from Jay-Z to this news today about the maid. So she, according to the New York Post, basically wanted her aides to forward information, classified information, sensitive information, to her housekeeper at her Chappaqua house so it could get printed. I mean, I'm saying, like, who the heck forwards work emails to a housekeeper to begin with, right? I mean, that's just some weird, you know. And then on top of that, this woman didn't have any clearance. This housekeeper was not supposed to see any of this information. So Hillary Clinton, who actually previously had sent out a note to her staff saying, being very careful about what you send and to whom you send it, is sending it on to her maid?
It's amazing. There's a very interesting detail in this terrific story by Paul Sperry. I commend him for writing it. It says here, the FBI noted Clinton periodically received the Presidential Daily Brief, a top-secret document prepared by the CIA and other U.S. intelligence agencies. She received that and had her maid print the Presidential Daily Brief. Nothing gets any more secret than that. And to have somebody without security clearance getting this sort of thing, and she may be perfectly decent and honorable, all that, but who knows if she sees something and mentions it to passing it to somebody, or somebody's tapped her phone and is listening in, who knows what. This is gross negligence, and by that standard, Hillary Clinton should be convicted under the Espionage Act and begin serving time in a federal penitentiary, not be on the way to the Oval Office.
You know, she's got all these excuses, like, you know, with Qatar. We actually haven't heard from her on this one, but Qatar, you know, giving the foundation $1 million, she never repeated that or actually told the State Department about that, despite having promised to do so if there were any big donations that came in. I mean, my goodness, it's like one after another, and like, at some point, you're running out of excuses, are you not, Stephen?
Yeah, I mean, look, all of these things tell us the same story. So it's just a total disregard for the rules and the laws that apply to other people, whether you're talking about repair work that they had done on their home, whether you're talking about the potential pay-to-play with the Clinton Foundation, and especially whether you're talking about her handling of classified and sensitive information. I mean, you know, when the FBI 302s, these summaries of FBI interviews came out a couple weeks ago, there were interviews with diplomatic security agents who were horrified at what they said was Hillary Clinton's disregard for basic rules that others had had to follow for years. And I remember calling one of them about how she takes her BlackBerry into the SCIF, which is this secure compartmental information facility where she gets her classified information. You're not allowed to take your BlackBerry into the SCIF. Nobody does this. It's rule number one. And all sorts of interesting information came out of those 302 interview summaries.
Right? I mean, you know, wanting to make all these rules for everybody else. They can all live by it, but I don't have to. Why not? Unfortunately, I'm out of time. I'm going to leave it there.
She spent 6 years on the Senate Armed Services Committee. She should know better than this. 6 years on the Senate Armed Services Committee dealing with state secrets.
Thank you so much. Good to have you here, Dory and Stephen. All right, I'm going to be back into you. All right, Donald Trump on his way to Minnesota right now, a state so solidly Democratic that it has not voted Republican since 1972. And then he's going to head to another Democratic stronghold, Michigan, yet another state once seen as a safe bet for Hillary Clinton. Hillary, at one time, had what many call just an insurmountable lead in the battleground states. But now suddenly, as he gains momentum, that firewall is crumbling. Joining me right now with a look at all of it, pollster Lee Carter, conservative commentator Gina Loudon, Democratic strategist John Rowley, and Bill Whelan from the Hoover Institute. Good to have all you here. Lee, starting with you. People are saying he could actually turn some of these historically blue states red. Your thoughts?
I think anything is possible in this election. So I think as we're looking at these polls, it's so hard to predict who is actually turning out. So likely voters are what these polls are made of. I think we're seeing that in North Carolina and Florida, we're seeing that Hispanic vote is coming out more than expected. They're not counted in likely voters. I think the traditional Reagan Democrats who haven't voted in places like Minnesota, like Michigan, for a long time are going to be coming out in record numbers. So I think that we're going to see quite a switch on Election Day from what we're seeing in the poll.
Wow. I mean, Gina, this is what people are anticipating. Hey, look, this is what we saw with Brexit, right? All the polls basically said there was no chance that the UK was going to separate from the EU. And then all of a sudden, as you got days closer to the event, the polls started to narrow. We started to see things sort of shift, much like we're seeing now. And then what do you know? Lo and behold, the EU, or the UK rather, said bye-bye to the EU. I mean, are we witnessing potentially a similar phenomenon here?
I think that was very inspiring for people who were hoping for an outsider to come in and do the things that Mr. Trump has done. I think it might account even partly for the momentum that we're seeing. He comes in with that outsider status. That's what voters, especially the undecided voters, that's what they'll tend to gravitate to once they're actually in that voting booth. But we saw the enthusiasm gap in the latest Fox poll that tells us that enthusiasm gap is getting even wider in Mr. Trump's favor. So you combine those three factors, and I think he has reason to feel optimistic.
Let's zero in on a state like New Hampshire, John Raleigh, my home state, and suddenly you've seen a real turnaround in those polls. Hillary Clinton had been leading. Now they're neck and neck. What happened to her?
Very clearly, I mean, about 9 days ago, there was a black swan in this race, which was the FBI announcement. This campaign was over then, and so that's really been a game changer. And so as you look at states like, whether it's New Hampshire, Florida, Nevada, a lot of different places, even the bluer states of Michigan and Pennsylvania, there is plenty of good and bad news all over the place for either side. And I think really there's probably a competing turnout model, and they're not mutually exclusive. Is there going to be a tidal wave of Latino and Hispanic turnout, which is a total rejection of Trump and an attraction to Hillary? But then also is Trump's silent majority of the sticks, this rural vote, which we see in a lot of places, is turning out.
I can tell you, John, you're sounding remarkably middle of the road right now. Usually, which I'm wondering if you're getting nervous now, if you can't call this because you've been so much sort of under the assumption that Hillary Clinton would take this in a landslide. And I think yourself and other pundits, frankly, have started to back away from that in a way that is very interesting right now to watch. Your thoughts, Bill?
Well, I think both sides should be nervous because in this election, I was doing the math before we went on the air. There are 6 or 7 states that go red to blue or blue to red in this election. Trish, if you go back to 2012, only 2 states flipped from one side to the other, Indiana and North Carolina. Look, you go from 3 different time zones and find states in all these time zones that could change. This is great. The one thing about this election, which I find fascinating, it's like watching the Super Bowl, in that both candidates have come to a core strategy. Her strategy is turnout. She's going to marshal her forces through early vote and then ground game on Election Day. And Trump is hoping for, frankly, a cosmic force that, like you mentioned with Brexit,
but isn't that
voters
turnout
are going to
too? Isn't that enthusiasm?
Well, enthusiasm, too, and you're going to see this, for example, a good place to look at this is Ohio right now. CBS YouGov came out with their Battleground Tracker poll this morning. Hillary has a 63-13 lead among early voters, but you look on the other side as to enthusiasm, and Trump enjoys the enthusiasm side, so
and let's
he
not
may
forget
prevail on
what's
Election Day
happened,
because of that.
Since some of those early ballots were cast. I mean, John was just making the point that this election may shift dramatically as a result of the FBI investigation.
And
Lee,
don't forget one other.
Hang on, I'll come back to you in a second. But what are you seeing right now, Lee, in terms of sentiment among voters who were in the middle, independents? I mean, we've got the Fox News poll, right, which suggests that a lot of independents are increasingly going for Trump. What is your data showing?
So we are seeing 8% lead in Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton in the independents. There were times we saw more. But I do think that right now the independents are leaning towards Donald Trump. Whenever I'm doing my dial test and looking and focusing on the message, he is winning them over. And the reason is it's not necessarily about Donald Trump. And I think that's what people have to understand. This is not about the man Donald Trump. This is about the anti-establishment. We need to do things differently. D.C. needs to be blown up. We're tired of the corruption. Everything that's come out in the last few weeks about Wikileaks and Comey has indicated this backroom politics that's not for the people, it's for the elite, and I think it's got people upset and more likely to vote for Donald Trump than they would be before.
Wow, it's interesting. Gina, you originally were not a Donald Trump supporter. You came around through the primary process. Is one of your biggest concerns as a voter, as a conservative, this idea that somehow the system is rigged and that the political elites have just taken over?
Well, we've seen that, and I know that to be true. I'm married to a former state senator, and I've seen how the establishment works, and I know that there is a huge force, both, Republican people who at least call themselves Republicans and Democrats who've been against Mr. Trump. But I also think that he has done a marvelous job, Trish, of working that to his advantage and saying, hey, I am the outsider candidate, sort of rejecting that label and just running as almost an independently minded conservative who is constitutionally based. I think that will win those undecided that want the outsider vote.
You know, it is the year of the outsider, and I think that people are increasingly getting so fed up with both parties that they don't want to see someone who's just beholden to a party itself. He certainly has not been beholden to any party, for sure. Anyway, Lee, Gina, John, and Bill, thank you so much. Good to have you all here. It's going to be an interesting 2 days to go. Pennsylvania, because it's becoming make or break territory on the road to 270 for both candidates. Hillary's huge lead gone. In fact, she's only up about 2 points right now. Connell McShane is in Westchester, Pennsylvania. He joins me now with the latest. Hey, Connell.
Well, it's very well, hey, Trish, an area that may decide how this state goes. As you say, the polls have been getting closer in Pennsylvania. We know that Donald Trump has support in rural areas and Hillary Clinton has support in many of the big cities like Philadelphia and Pittsburgh. But what will happen in the suburbs? There are 4 suburban counties that surround Philadelphia, and only Chester County, where we are, went for the Republican Mitt Romney last time around and barely went in that direction. So can Trump keep it red? He has not been polling well here, especially with women voters. And just over the last half an hour or so, I talked to 2 women voters in Westchester and got 2 very different perspectives, one for Clinton, one for Trump. Take a look.
We're all immigrants from somewhere, and I think this is a country that embraces difference, and we have certain rights, healthcare being one of them, and so I'm for the candidate who will fight for all of that.
I don't like that she may be indicted, and that I feel that she may have done things wrong and covers up things, and not for the people.
Okay.
Trump has his issues that I don't agree on some of the things he's said, but I believe he'll bring change to America.
And that pretty much sums it up, right, Trish, that he'll bring change to America. We've heard it from so many Trump supporters at his rallies, and we heard it here on the streets of Westchester right ahead of the election. But will it be enough? The Clinton campaign has a superior organization. We saw that in action earlier today, whereas Trump, that women and others, they have the momentum and the enthusiasm. We'll see which one wins out. But interesting to get both
incredible to see
perspective, so different.
He's been able to make up so much ground in so many of these states that people had pretty much written off.
Yeah.
And now, certainly within the margin of error. Connell McShane, thank you so much. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to be right back into. Okay, how do you like this? The Roman Catholic Diocese of San Diego denounced one of its parishes after that church actually handed out pamphlets which said that voting for Democrats is a mortal sin that could lead to an eternity in hell. This, as new polls show, Donald Trump with a 13-point lead over Hillary Clinton among Catholic voters. But it begs the question here, does religion have a place in politics? Joining me right now is the niece of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Alveda King. Alveda, welcome back. Good to have you here.
Hi, Trish.
I know you're it's good to have you. I know you're very involved in the religious community, very involved. You're also very involved in the political community. You're a supporter of Donald Trump's. How do you mix the two, or do you separate them? Talk to us about that balance.
We can separate them. I'm all dressed up in my Sunday best today. I've been to church. Now, there are reports of people getting upset and boycotting churches, married couples moving into separate bedrooms, people at work almost coming to blows. All of this has been going on. And so when we get this report, you know, I'm not a Catholic. I'm a non-denominational Christian. I work for Priests for Life, But it's just people have brought religion up into each other's faces. You're a sinner if you don't endorse Donald Trump. You're a sinner if you don't vote for Hillary Clinton. You're a sinner. No, no, no. We are Christian people, I'm speaking from my perspective, with an obligation as citizens of the United States to pray and vote responsibly. That's the end of that.
And you don't want the church telling you how to vote.
Well, you know, the church really could have passed out information showing what the 2 platforms are, who's going to do the most Supreme Court justices who are pro-life and all of that. That's good. That's legal. So to inform the people as to the state, I want people to know that abortion is not health care, for instance. So we're not fighting for women to still be able to have abortions, but to be healthy. That kind of information is legal, and it's fine to share that information, but we're not supposed to fall apart and argue.
You know, Alveda, you bring up something which I think is very true in this election. So, you know, perhaps to a certain extent it happens every 4 years, but it seems like it's happening more now than ever before.
Like this.
And that's that people get so angry with each other about which candidate they're supporting, and they take it so personally. You know, at the end of the day, family, friendships, that matters, right? I mean, what's your advice to them for, you know, how to separate politics and your personal life?
I have lived and voted in 2 centuries. I've never seen this kind of anarchy among friends, family members, co-workers. It's incredible. I mean, who's going to even have Christmas or Thanksgiving and enjoy it if